Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
So welcome everyone to today's podcast. Thank you for being part of this discussion. I am so excited to have the chance to visit with Jamee Eggers. So let me tell you a little bit about Jamee. Jamee serves as the Producer Education Director at the Iowa Pork Producers Association here in Iowa. Her responsibilities include facilitating the activities associated with producer-led committees in the areas of swine health, animal well-being, research, and producer education. She's involved in the development of resources, recognition programs for excellence in pork production, and furthering the vision of IPPA, Successful Farmers, Enriched Lives. Jamee received her Bachelor of Science degree from Iowa State University and her Master of Science degree from the University of Nebraska. Both degrees were in the field of animal science. Jamee and her husband raise and sell show pigs throughout the U.S., as well as farm corn and soybeans in central Iowa. And I have known Jamee for a couple of years now and have had just a delightful opportunity to work with her in a couple of different organizations, really watching her and encouraging her as she's doing amazing things within those organizations, rolling out project management practices, helping people work together more effectively. And it has been a joy to get to know you, Jamee. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yay. So as we were preparing a little bit for this session, we talked about the things that you were excited to share. And I am just thrilled with the topic that you've chosen, the 5 things you've learned about leading meetings that you wish you had learned sooner. I know that we've got a lot of listeners who will relate to this topic, and I just can't wait to dive right in. So the first one that you had started with, and you gave me a sneak peek on some of these, is the importance of ground rules or group norms or meeting rules. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think I have learned that, especially on topics that are contentious or tough or groups that are very different, so if you're bringing a lot of perspectives to the meeting, it's really important to set the tone and set and manage expectations really early in your meeting. So setting those right up front. And really getting everybody to work together to agree on how to conduct the meeting, phrases that you're going to avoid, phrases that you want to encourage people to use, things or activities that you want to discourage or encourage during the meeting. Just laying all of that on the table up front seems to help the meeting go a lot better. It helps people get on the same team and the same page. And then if something does happen to go awry, if you have someone that's acting a fool or something like that, it's really easy to go back to that list of ways that you agreed to behave or ways you agreed to accomplish something today.
You bet. And I noticed, I noticed in your list that you had said you'd actually use the word always start with group norms. And I love this. I'm super careful about words like always and never. And I know you feel passionately about it because you capitalized it and everything. So tell me some of your favorites. If you always use them, maybe they don't always have the same norms, but there are probably some that you keep in your hip pocket. What are your favorites?
Yeah, so I capitalized always because I've had a situation where I haven't set some group norms, and then you get into the meeting and it's really hard to go back and be like, we all agreed. Oh, wait, we didn't actually all agree we were going to do that. So it makes it really hard to bring it back around if you don't set that tone early if something goes wrong. I would say some of my favorites are, I really like to use the let's all agree to stay engaged. So the sub-bullet underneath that is electronics are the exception, not the rule. But we're all really busy and we're all connected, obviously, and people that are coming to Iowa Pork, as an example, to do a meeting or a workshop here are taking time out of their lives and their jobs. So it's important that they be connected. So it's almost impossible to use that group norm without following it up with, we all agree that we're going to start and stop on time and take breaks, which I think would be my second favorite one. Because if you tell people electronics are the exception and not the rule, but you understand that they're going to need to reply to emails and they're going to need to take phone calls and things, then you have to give them a break during your meeting to do that. Otherwise, no matter what you say, they're going to be on their phone and not be quite as engaged.
You bet. I'm always afraid that I'm going to get pushback on this one. And one of my stories from my own experience was facilitating a group that were leaders of a community. They were community leaders. We had the mayor, we had the city manager, we had the chief of police, we had the fire chief, we had the head of Parks and Rec, and the librarian. I think there was someone else in the room. And it was for a half-day retreat. And I remember asking them, sort of opening it up, saying, well, how would you like to handle interruptions? How would you like to handle your cell phones in particular? Do you want them on silent? Do you want to take calls in the hall? Do you want them off? What do you want? And unanimously, they all said, we want our cell phones off. Cell phones off. And I was kind of surprised with that particular audience. I'm like, whoa, are you sure? And then the chief of police leaned into me. He says, ma'am, they know how to reach us if there's an emergency.
Yeah, but I think that's also a great story for talking about how you all have to agree on it. This is not top down. I mean, we call them meeting rules if you don't want to call them group norms because group norms doesn't resonate with everybody in the room. But it's not like a criminal penalty for violating those things. And it's more they're written on your flip chart and agreed upon more by consensus. I mean, you can start with some that are your suggestions to the group, but you always have to ask, are there more? What have we missed? Are there things that this group feels are important for setting the tone and managing expectations as well? So I always want it to be a consensus-based group decision on what that's why they're called group norms, if you can use that.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to your second tip, which was to give people something to do with their hands. Tell me a little of your thoughts about that.
So this is one that I absolutely parroted from you and stole from you, that it's okay. People want to do things. They want to doodle. They want to pick up their phone. They want to, which is maybe a little bit of a different kind of psychopathy, right, than doodling. But like people want, especially in longer meetings or meetings with a lot of knowledge transfer, where somebody is presenting or talking at the group and less on workshopping, people want something to do to stay engaged. So arriving at a place where I could understand that I think better, I answer questions better, I pay more attention if I have something that I can do with my hands that's obviously not disruptive to everybody else in the room. So here at IPPA, we use the squishy pigs. They're like a stress ball in the shape of a pig. We've used pipe cleaners. We use Play-Doh, which is one I totally stole from you. Pipe cleaners seem to be really fun too. It's impressive the creative things that they come up with the pipe cleaners. We've used some of the just foam shapes that you can kind of stick together. And that's not quite as effective because they end up falling on the floor and people are searching for them. And then recently, I don't know, stay tuned on how this goes, but we ordered the fidget Rubik's Cubes, which are like a fidget spinner, only quieter and a little more contextual. Like there's more specific activity involved with those. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. You have the benefit of them being branded. So like we always put our Iowa Pork logo on them. And so people are leaving your meeting with something that has your brand on it.
Nice. I know that in some of our classes, especially the ones on emotional intelligence or navigating through tough moments, those moments where we're having tough conversations that can be stressful, we do have branded stress balls for those that make a difference because people like to, especially when they're thinking through the tough conversations, that's really meaningful. You know, if I put people in a room together for 2.5 hours or more, by golly, they get Play-Doh to play with. What are some of the more creative Play-Doh creations that you've seen? Or this pipes cleaner? What are people making out of Play-Doh or pipe cleaners these days?
I think my favorite thing out of a pipe cleaner was somebody made like a tiara for one of our female members. Last summer, we had a committee meeting and I challenged it was the well-being committee. And I said, I have a little prize for the person who makes the most creative thing. The well-being committee talks a lot about the transport quality assurance program, so livestock haulers. Mm-hmm. And somebody actually built a little mini livestock truck.
Oh my goodness.
With their Play-Doh. Yeah.
Very cool.
And obviously here we get a lot of the pig shapes and pig heads and little Play-Doh pigs.
You bet. I've loved watching groups that I've worked with graduate from, snowmen to, they start with snowballs and then they go to snowmen and then they, the snakes, of course, are in there, the dice in there. I recall your wellness one reminds me of someone had put together a Band-Aid one time. I thought that was kind of clever.
Oh, yep.
Excellent.
I think I saw bacon. Somebody made some bacon.
Oh, that's great. Now, when I'm talking about my training, I use the analogy of 2.5 hours. If you're in a room with anything that I'm doing for 2.5 hours or more, I promise that you've always got something to play. And your perspective is for any length of time if they're going to be listening. But let's talk about the longer meetings. Your third point is around meetings over 3 hours. What is your declaration about a meeting longer than 3 hours?
I feel that at least my experience here has been that meetings that are over 3 hours long, even with a lunch break, are too long and they start to get unproductive. And I think it's a sign that maybe that I'm trying to cram too much into, I'm not allowing enough time for thinking, for discussion, and not allowing enough time for that to be fruitful. And I think if I put together a meeting agenda and my agenda is looking like it is stuff that I need this group to meet longer than 3 hours, probably means I need a second meeting.
Nice. I'm sure your participants appreciate that about you.
Yeah, and I would much rather have what feels like a pretty packed agenda, but it has enough time for discussion, for poster sessions, for workshopping, for whatever you need it to accomplish, and then get it done early rather than trying to get too much into a small space of time. And I think, like I mentioned before, people that are coming here for meetings are giving up another day job or a lot of other responsibilities that are not here. It's a volunteer thing that I'm asking them to do. And they would much rather come more than once in a short period of time that's productive than me trying to cram too much into one meeting and then we end up running long.
Yep, that makes good sense. So from a pragmatic standpoint, especially since you've had the experience of having to gather people from perhaps further away and pull them into a single location, if you were faced with something that really needed that additional time and there were the complexities of travel or overnight accommodations, what would be your perspective on trying to do maybe a half hour the afternoon of day one or a half day the afternoon of day one and then the remaining half day the morning of day two? Would that satisfy the breaking it up a little bit?
Absolutely. And that, fortunately, I haven't had a topic here that's required that much, but I can think of things that would do that. And I think that's better. I think giving everybody a chance to leave on the evening of the first night and either go to a nice dinner or do something social or something that is not specifically work related or not on that topic allows them some space and time to not think about it. And they can opt in or opt out of those things if they're people who need to get away from the group and go to their room and be quiet, then they can do that. Or if they want to be social and do social things, they can do that as well. And then also, I have seen from National Pork Board, sometimes if you have to make a big decision, giving people that 12 hours or that the 8 hours overnight to help them think about it and process it and then come back in the morning and make a decision, again, helps it be much more productive.
You bet. Okay, great stuff. So your fourth tip was around icebreakers and what to do about those. And I'm going to just pause and give the tiniest caveat on this one because there are all kinds of people who have all kinds of opinions about icebreakers. So tell me your opinion and defend it because I love where you stand.
Well, I'm a convert here. I was originally, I'm an introverted extrovert maybe. So in the beginning I was like, oh Lord, please don't ask me something personal, right? But over time, and because I've worked with groups that are so diverse and they have such differing perspectives, I have discovered that they can be really important with those mixed groups to help each other we go do introductions in a meeting and so I'm so-and-so and I work for so-and-so or I'm this person and I live here. And those are the labels that you get. And whether we like it or not, you make some judgments based on that. And if you do some icebreaker questions or introduction questions that are more personal or give you more to talk about than those initial labels, and if you introduce some level of human vulnerability into introductions, it helps the group be more cohesive and it helps see each other more as humans and as individuals instead of just those kind of, well, here's my role at a company or whatever the case may be. They're from Northern Iowa, so they must be this way,
Right. So do you have ideas? Like I think about things that people have asked in rooms that I've been in, what's your favorite breakfast cereal? If you were a dog or if you were an animal, what animal would you be? Or, what's your superpower? Things like that. What have you found to be effective questions? Because I'm not sure I'm sold on any of those.
So tell me about the most unusual job you've had.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that one gets a little more into your history and people are like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that, or people do that. It turns into sometimes a dirty jobs episode and you're, learning different things. And that's not one that requires you to like really think about something you mean. It's an experience you've had, so you just have to list it. That's very different from a question like, in your life, who's your greatest hero? That requires you to think a little bit more. But on the flip side, the who's your greatest hero question will introduce even more vulnerability and more personalness to that question. So it kind of depends. For a group that knows each other really well, but you want to make sure that they have a positive start to the meeting, like what's the best thing that's happened to you this weekend or something like that. But those seem kind of superficial for groups that don't know each other very well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thinking about a couple of those examples, somewhere along the line, I was involved in a networking group. And I'm thinking about the tone setting that can happen from a question, right? If you want people to be uplifted and inspired, then the question needs to be something uplifting and inspiring and helping them think about their greatest or their best selves. And I've done a couple in a couple different places recently. One of the questions that was sort of the icebreakers, tell me one thing you love about your job. Okay, so that got everybody reminding themselves that, oh yeah, I actually do like my job, even though it's Monday. So, but there was one that was I'm looking maybe for some commiseration, or how could we have helped this poor gal recover? I was in a networking meeting and she said, oh, let's all just get to know each other a little better. And it was right after Christmas, so it was a January session. And she says, everybody go around and say your name and where you work and the worst present you got this Christmas. And I went, oh no, why would you do something like this? So as it got to me, I remember thinking, okay, well, I can't tell you what my worst present was, but let me tell you about my favorite present. And just as a participant, when I realized where we were going with the tone of the room, just even as a helpful participant. So I wasn't the facilitator, but can I help redirect the conversation and kind of respondent to a question, help maybe even the facilitator who didn't set it off right, or if someone next to you is struggling with someone, can you as a helpful participant, can you help bring it back?
Right.
So how have you as a facilitator been able to help prepare people for a question so that they're not caught off guard?
One of the things I like to do is put the question that I'm going to ask either up on the PowerPoint screen or on the flip chart in the room, and have it there available as people are mingling, coming in the room, greeting each other, getting some coffee, whatever they're doing, so that, especially for the questions that are a little bit harder that you have to think about, that are kind of personal, that you're not going to have an easy answer right off the tip of your tongue. That way people can see it, read it, think about it, and especially important for the personality types in the room that need a space of time and can't think of that stuff quickly and on the spot. So assuming that they're glancing at it, reading it as they're coming in the room, that they're kind of subconsciously thinking about that and preparing their answer.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, so the last question, another topic, your last point of 5 things you'd wish you'd learned sooner. This is another one that can create some feedback, right? There are people who are afraid of the pre-meeting or hate the meeting before the meeting. And your tip here is not to be afraid of pre-meetings. Tell us about that.
I classify that really a lot under relationship management. So I too hate the pre-meeting if the pre-meeting is going to be a pre-meeting session. Those aren't productive, and that's not what I mean by don't be afraid of the pre-meeting. I mean pre-meetings that have clear objectives, and pre-meetings where specifically you need to get a new teammate up to speed on where the group has been, so that you don't spend the first 30 minutes of your meeting getting everybody up to speed. Or it's also important if you have a new teammate that you already know is going to be a really different personality type. So they can be important for kind of managing expectations of maybe that difficult person, and then also asking for help from the other people on your team or at the meeting ahead of time, using, you helped me with this yesterday, in fact, using some words saying, I would appreciate some help with this, and you could help me by saying whatever when the time is right. And all of those things are, so I originally thought that if you did that you're being catty or that you're removing the point of the meeting, and that's not the case at all. All you're doing is managing expectations up front, and it helps the meeting continue to be productive, and it helps everybody have an opportunity to be a value add to your meeting instead of also getting frustrated, right? I've also found that I have some teammates that I work with directly, not necessarily on task force or committees, but teammates that I work with directly that are personality types where they need a space of time to think about it. They're not on the spot question answers. They need time to ruminate on it. So if I meet with them and just tell them what the plan is for the meeting, or, hey, we're going to review this document. Here it is 3 days ahead of time for you to read it first. Again, it just helps everybody be more comfortable and be a value add to the meeting.
You bet. Well, now this creates a pretty significant challenge for those who think that meetings, it's okay to just wing it for a meeting, because now you're talking about a pre-meeting. So what does that do to your planning efforts?
So it definitely does require you to plan ahead a little bit sooner. You've got to have an agenda set sooner. You have to really think through who are your audiences, who are your stakeholders, who are the people and their personalities that are showing up to the meeting. So you do have to start sooner, but it's one of those things that pays dividends in the end. And people want to keep coming back to your meeting because they feel like they leave the meeting and go, that was amazing. We got all this stuff done, instead of, spending 30 minutes rehashing something or whatever.
You bet. I'm looking back through your tips, Jamie, and always start with group norms, give people something to do with their hands, keep the meetings to 3 hours or less. Icebreakers can be useful. It can be your friend, and the pre-meetings. The common theme that I'm sensing in all of these is your commitment to making the meeting experience effective for your participants. And I love that you've put the participants first in all of this. Thank you. What kind of results do you see out of that?
I have found that people are much more willing to come back. Like, the first set of committee meetings or task force meetings that I had here at IPPA, the people were kind of non-committal to doodle polls, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can make it or not. And after we got through a couple that were really effective and good, and then they've seen progress towards tactics, and I've let them out of those meetings early and given them time back in their day, whether that's on a webinar or like web conference or a face-to-face meeting. Now people are really quick to respond to me. My meeting attendance has increased. So people are they're feeling the value. And so they're more willing to be active and participate in it. I've also gotten just a lot of good feedback, like, thank you, I learned a lot, or thank you, that really helped me understand, or we really accomplished a lot, or I feel really good about where we're going, are the types of things that I hear.
You bet. I'm so glad to hear that, Jamie, because in so many cases in today's world, right, meetings are a form of torture for so many of us. We just drag people unwillingly to meetings, and we suffer through them if they're poorly run. And the tips that you've shared today are just really wonderful examples of putting your participants first and making effective meetings. So thank you.
I will caution you, though, you get really angry at the people who don't put in the work. So, I really have a hard time now going to a meeting where I don't know what the objective of the meeting is, nor if I don't have an agenda before I go.
Right? Your own expectations. Now that you know how effective meetings are run, you have less tolerance for nonsense, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You bet. So as we're sort of wrapping up, we're just about out of time here. This is the Even Better podcast. And so a question that I would just love to ask you and get your perspective on is, what's one thing that's making you even better right now? And you can take this any direction you want.
It is undoubtedly getting coaching and mentorship help. And so finding really specific things that I need to improve or that I need help on, that I can't sort out, and then looking for people who are experts in that or really helpful in that or have a perspective that resonates with me, and then asking them for help. And whether that's in meeting facilitation that you've helped me with, or I've done some leadership coaching lately that's just really helped me with relationship management on my team and with my stakeholders, and just finding a thing that admitting I don't understand this or I can't work through this, I need somebody else's perspective, I need another view of this to help me through that. So coaching and mentoring for sure.
Oh, for sure. So that demonstrates a level of vulnerability that would seem scary to a lot of our listeners. But you're seeing good results out of that. It's people haven't destroyed you because you've expressed that you need help, right? You're actually finding helpful people who help you and are making you even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've had zero negative reaction to asking for help.
Wonderful. What a great way to end. Oh, Jamie, thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy. I appreciate you making time for us today. Thank you for sharing your tips with our listeners, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. This has been really fun.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.